Our audience are joining us from Canada, so good morning to you wherever you are joining us from today. And welcome to our webinar where we're going to be looking at how to deploy AI in the public sector. I'm Siobhan Bonita, I'm a former UK civil servant, and I'm delighted to be chairing this webinar on behalf of Global Government Forum, which is a publishing house that serves civil servants all around the world. Now, in terms of today's topic, so as I say, it's how to deploy AI in the public sector. And this question of how to develop and deploy artificial intelligence is one of the key issues facing governments all around the world. Governments are needing to develop at pace their guidelines for public servants on how they can use AI and make the most of it. But in doing that, they're also having to look at how they consider reviewing and rewiring their own processes. AI has huge potential to transform service delivery as well as the internal operations of the public sector, but there are also some very significant risks involved. So in today's webinar, we're going to cover lots of issues, including, for example, when and how to deploy artificial intelligence in government and its potential in both policy development and service delivery, how government data should be collected and arranged to enable the best use of AI, and what governments can do to maximise the inclusive and equitable use of AI. We've got a great panel with us today. We've got 4 fantastic speakers, and in a moment, I'm going to introduce our speakers and ask them all to give some short opening remarks. But actually, this webinar is also an opportunity for you, our audience, to put your questions, your comments, your thoughts to our panel. So on whichever device you are using, you should have a Q&A button somewhere on that device. Please use that Q&A feature at any point from now on to message in your questions or your comments, and we'll get through as many of those as we can before the end of today's webinar. So now let me introduce our panel. So first we will hear from Aaron Jaffrey, who is Chief Product Owner and Architect for Benefits Delivery Modernisation Programme in Service Canada. Aaron joined Service Canada from the Department for Work and Pensions in the UK, where he led teams transforming the experience for UK citizens across a number of services, including retirement, health and disability, and digital identity. Then we will hear from Jay Conti, who is Policy Analyst at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And actually, our next 3 speakers are all from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and they were all part of the team that was last year's Public Service Data Challenge winning team. So we're going to hear more about that and more on some of those issues from all of them. But Jay, who is the policy analyst there, it was actually Jay's original idea, I think, that it was at the base of the team that won the Public Service Data Challenge. So we'll hear from Jay first. Then we will hear from Nicole Johnson, who is a senior data analyst with a background in statistics, mathematics, and advanced analytics. And her current role focuses on performance reporting, data management and analytics, project planning, and stakeholder partnership. And she's a real advocate for data initiatives aimed at leveraging data for improving business decision-making. And then last, but by no means least, we'll hear from Steve Rennie, who is Director for Data-Driven Technologies, also, as I said, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, where he leads a division focused on advancing the responsible and ethical adoption of advanced technologies, including artificial intelligence and robotic process automation. Steve previously held roles at Natural Resources Canada and Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and he was a former journalist where he covered federal politics for nearly a decade in the Parliamentary Bureau of the Canadian Press News Agency, and later served as the managing editor of Metro Ottawa. So I'm sure you'll agree, we have a great panel with us here today. Please do take this opportunity, once you've heard from them or during their presentations, to message in your questions so that we can have a good conversation before the end of the webinar. But now, without further ado, I am going to invite Aaron to give us his opening thoughts. Over to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Siobhan. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you here this morning in a beautiful sunny morning here in Ottawa in Canada. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Benefits Delivery Modernization Program, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that and then how we are looking at artificial intelligence to support how we're delivering for Canadians. So the Benefits Delivery Modernization Program has been touted as the biggest IT-enabled transformation the Government of Canada has ever attempted. It is effectively taking the way that we are delivering the three federal statutory benefits for Canadians: employment insurance, old age security, and Canada Pension Plan, and redesigning and rethinking the way that we deliver those services to the benefit of Canadians as a whole. Whilst we're doing that, also thinking about how we are replace every single channel, every single touch point that you may have with the federal government when it comes to those three statutory benefits, whether it be digital through My Service Canada account, whether it be through the call centres, or whether it be through post as well. And all wrapped into that is things like digital identity and how we identify you are who you say you are when you come to claim a benefit, and indeed how we keep you up to date on what you're doing and how you manage your claim in the long term. So there's a lot within what the Benefits Delivery Modernisation Programme is trying to do for Service Canada and for Canadians as a whole. What we have some really key operating principles as part of the Benefit Delivery Modernisation Programme. One of that is that we are client-centered, and client centricity, I think, within this sphere, as we have emerging technology, is paramount to how we step through these challenges and how we bring to bear the power of artificial intelligence. One of those elements that we're very conscious of when it comes to client centricity, and from the statistics that have been going on, not just in Canada, but across the world, is the fading trust in government institutions. And so we have this time in our lives where we're seeing the emergence of potentially the most disruptive technology since the industrial age, where we're looking at bureaucratic systems that were automated for large data entry from the 1950s through computerization. And now we're applying the concepts of human-like intelligence onto our data in mass bureaucratic systems in a period of ever-decreasing trust in our public institutions. And this is a big challenge for all public servants, and particularly in a benefit delivery modernization program, when we are really seeking to ensure that we have touch points with Canadians, and we're enabling Canadians to claim these three statutory benefits and to ensure that their journey is as powerful as possible. And the reason why that's so important to us is ultimately when you look at how artificial intelligence can be applied, and where the things that we may talk about today in terms of where it may be utilized, we need to continue to retain the trust of the public and also the ability for us to justify the decisions that we make. And some of the challenges that we have ahead of us is that the power of artificial intelligence is such that we may, if we're not careful, not understand fully how we came to certain conclusions. And when we're serving the public and we're providing policy outcomes, it is fundamental that we retain control of that decision making, and we retain control of the understanding how we've come to the conclusions that we have come to. So that means effectively that as a public service and within Benefits Delivery and Modernization Program, as we are thinking about how we are designing and delivering services for Canadians in the future, we're doing so in a very optimistic but cautious manner. You know, we're certainly very open to and indeed embracing the way that artificial intelligence can improve the public service delivery of our three statutory benefits, and really thinking about how it supports all the way through our ecosystem, from a client who may have just become unemployed and doesn't understand what they may be entitled to, or indeed how the process works, all the way through to a service officer who is making a decision on a claim that has come through, and thinking about how we support and augment each of those personas' journeys, whether it be the client themselves and how we can support them, or whether it be the service officer and how we support them to ensure that we are driving the best client experience we possibly can. Our hypothesis is that if we deliver a better client experience, if we provide more transparency, if we enable clients to understand better how decisions are made and understand their journey and get the outcome that they are entitled to, that will have a positive impact on the trust that people have within the services and within the systems. However, from where we are today to where we need to go, and with the developing technologies that we have, there is a lot of work to do to carefully step through that minefield and ensure that we are both treating our clients with respect, we're understanding their points of view, we are taking them on the journey with us, and we are able to ethically apply the AI models that we will put in place in the future. And so I'm very happy to be here today and to talk to everybody and answer questions around the way the Benefits Delivery Modernization Program is taking these steps into artificial intelligence, where we see the opportunities for growth, where we are working with partners across the Government of Canada ecosystem to ensure that we are keeping a real focus on ensuring that the artificial intelligence that we embed within our program delivery is ethical, is transparent, and ultimately allows us to lead to better outcomes for Canadians.
Aaron, thank you so much. I think it's a really interesting, brilliant way to start, because actually, as you say, you're leading this huge IT-enabled transformation program, but you've hardly talked about the technology. You've really focused on people and culture as being the key considerations for you. So some of the key things I picked up there, how you're taking this client-centered approach as you progress with this transformative program, the importance of trust, and you set out that context so well, that we're doing these huge transformative programs using this technology that we've never had before, but in the context of that fading trust in government institutions. And I like the way you phrased it at the end, that if you deliver a great service, hopefully you're going to get higher levels of trust. So actually focusing on making sure the outcome is great should help in that journey. Lots of other things I took away from that for officials who are listening. You have to be able to justify your decision. So you yourself have to understand the technology and be able to explain the way that has led to the decisions that you have made. And then the importance of taking people along with you. So being transparent around how this technology is being used and really having the ethical considerations up front. And I think summarizing it all by, we're optimistic but cautious, is a really nice summary, I think, of your approach at the moment. Thanks so much, Aaron. Brilliant way for us to start. Jay, I'm going to come over to you now. And as you are the person I understand who had the idea for the data challenge winning idea, maybe you want to kick off by giving us a little bit of a summary of what that was and how that all progressed.
Sure, thanks, Soban. So yeah, I'll kick off by just giving people a sense of where the idea came from, and I'll pass it over to Nicole, who can kind of tell you how we took it from there. And Steve will talk a little bit more about what we're doing at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada with AI more generally. But kind of to give you the context, when the data challenge came up a few years ago, I had been a public servant for about 5 years at that time. And I didn't work directly on customer service delivery, but as public servants, we know how challenging customer service is. And as citizens, we know what it's like to be a customer trying to get a government service. We know what the challenges can be like. And I just found myself kind of musing on this problem over time, trying to understand it, trying to get some clarity on it. And to my mind, it sort of became clear that it's not an issue that public servants don't want to provide good customer service. It's not that we're unwilling or that we're lazy or anything like that. We just have very, very different incentive structures than what exist in the private sector, right? A lot of times, if we deliver a program or service or provide information, we're the only, quote, seller in that market. We don't have the same kinds of incentives that private businesses do to make it as easy as possible for customers to get the information that they need. So with that context in mind, I learned about some of these new generative language AI models and what they were capable of doing. And that was kind of the spark in my mind. I thought, okay, they have this really remarkable ability to be able to take a bunch of information and allow somebody to interact with it using very plain language. And so at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, we have a website that's called AgPal. It houses thousands, information on thousands of programs and services that we deliver federally, that provinces deliver. Really anything that somebody who has a problem in agriculture could go and look for resources. But you go to that site and it's like interacting with a lot of government websites. It's a clunky, kind of old feeling search box. It's very difficult to find what you're looking for. It's easy to get discouraged very quickly. And so we thought, okay, there has to be an opportunity here to use these new tools to make it much, much easier for Canadians to find the information that they want from AgPal. And that was really the start of it. We thought, okay, we've got this opportunity with the data challenge. We have a little more freedom and space to be creative and to experiment than we traditionally would as public servants. And we thought, okay, again, customer front of mind, how can we make this a really pleasurable experience for somebody to get the information that they need rather than a very challenging experience? And that was really the kernel of the idea. So I'll pass it over to Nicole.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks so much. Nicole, do you want to add on to what Jay was saying there in terms of the germ of the idea, but then how did you guys run with it?
Yeah, okay. So so we started, I'm going to kind of back up a little bit. So just to speak a little bit about the process and the start of the data challenge and then kind of where we went with it. So initially we had this idea that came from Jay, and we started the process and coming into this next new public service data challenge. I'm going to just start with how we initiated the project. So within kind of the first few weeks, we started off initially just actually getting to know the team. So the Public Service Data Challenge starts the competition really with a great introduction of the team and a full day where you can kind of start your ideation. So our initial conversations started with just like bringing together our strengths, what we could bring to that competition, our skills and expertise, and just really what we wanted to achieve with that initial idea, and really what individuals wanted to learn from that experience. So our beginning phase was really just important for us as a team, as it kind of fostered that team collaboration and trust. Knowing that like project deadlines were coming up very quickly, we decided that we all really couldn't be in every meeting or make every decision together. So how we did this is we separated into smaller teams. We had kind of a research partnership team, a tech team, and a communications team. And really, this breakdown allowed us to focus on specific areas. And it also created us to be kind of more efficient to drive the work in those areas. But we also met as a larger team on a less frequent basis to really share those thoughts on the process. We also, as Jay said, early on we connected with the business team AgPal. So since the idea related to that business unit, which really none of our members worked on that team directly, so we really worked closely with them to collaborate on the history of, where did they start to all their accomplishments thus far, and how our idea could enhance the search component. At the initial phase, we started with a search tool using natural language processing, and then after a couple of meetings with that business team, we really knew that we needed to learn more. So one of the members from our team thought it would be a great idea to hold hackathons and create partnerships. So from that point, we started planning hackathons. We ended up holding 2 hackathons throughout the data challenge, which brought together kind of senior management, people from across the department, industry reps, experts from Algonquin College's AI program, and also connected with our Office of Chief Data Officer, which aligned with work on AI. So after creating all these partnerships, we met and meetings with the business team, we really decided that that search was, the search component was our focus of our idea. And that's really what we delivered for this semi-final. Our pitch was enough to kind of first round. But I just want to kind of talk about after, our big win of the semi-final, our team regrouped afterwards and realized at that point we really didn't know kind of what to do next. We were deciding on how our idea could be expanded or scaled, but we really didn't know what the next steps would be. So I think when I think back at that time, it might have been maybe 2-3 weeks where we really didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Our team, what I would say is we didn't panic. We didn't think, we can't do it, but we just took a break. We kind of celebrated our win. And then we said, okay, we'll just take a break and we'll come back and refocus. And the reason why I share this is because I think it was a really important step in our journey. It was really the pivotal point decision making on our team. So either our team could have given up or really just gone in the same direction with that same idea. But the challenge really made us think bigger, and we decided to pivot our idea to an enhanced search, that chatbot. So really at that point, we were almost, we were halfway through the challenge, and it could have been a big risk because really we were starting a new idea at that time and it was a little bit late in the game, but we really focused and continued on. So we started focusing on that chatbot using AI, and we researched a lot. We researched in the market what the current tools were in the industry and what was also coming out in the media with news articles, and our idea progressed. We did lots of experimentation and started processing that tool. We did have, of course, other considerations like when we're dealing with large language models, dealing with privacy and any bias that would result from the tool itself. We connected with privacy officers and ensured that there were safeguards within our tool. So after the prototype was closer to be completed, we worked on quite a lot on the pitch to the judges. So we decided, we went into lots of the details, like who was going to speak, how we would deliver the presentation, how we were going to explain this, potential complicated tool with, AI. So how we could make it clear to the general public and to others. And just deciding things like, what media was involved. Like, are we using PowerPoint or are we going to use kind of a video? And we landed on using a video because we thought that it would really showcase the tool. So really, there was just lots of practice with the script and the pitch. And I really think that, as we all know, we were the winner of that data challenge. So our hard work paid off.
Nicole, thank you so much. Fascinating to hear your example, this one project, focusing on this one project. And again, the words that really struck me aren't to do with the technology itself. So you really focused on when you came together as a team, fostering collaboration, fostering trust, building new connections, building new partnerships. And I'm thinking all the time with these new technologies, I think this is what we're going to see happening in terms of different ways that people are going to have to be working across departments and across organizations. Going back to what Aaron said, this is right from the start of kind of policy development and policy decision making right down to service delivery and that front end, kind of what users see when they go online. So all of those people having to work together efficiently. And then also, I think something we're going to have to see more of in this new world is that ability to pivot, as you said, to actually take a pause, to rethink, to regroup, to pivot, to learn and adapt fast to these changing technologies around us. And then you've also brought up, I think, some of those broader issues that people in the audience might be thinking about, the privacy issues, the making sure that you aren't building bias into some of these programs, and making sure that you have the right safeguards in place. Thank you so much to Jay and to Nicole. Before I come to Steve, just to say, we have shared on the chat function, I think, to everybody, a link to the data challenge. And I know this year's one, I think the teams have already been chosen, but if you're already got ideas, you're in the audience, you're thinking, I would love to be part of this, hopefully there will be another one coming again. So don't so keep hold of those ideas and be thinking about how you might participate in future. Steve, we're coming over to you now.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today, and it's great to be with all my colleagues here. To situate myself maybe in this conversation, I lead a division at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada that is working to advance the responsible and ethical use of artificial intelligence right across the department. And as a bit of background on that, AFC, our department, has been working in artificial intelligence for a number of years now, not just my team, but other groups across the department in science and programs in other areas. But my team was formed to really advance it in a cohesive way, because we realized very quickly that if we were going to make any kind of difference using a technology like artificial intelligence, it really had to be done in a coordinated fashion rather than a siloed way. And that was very important for us. So my team's real core mission was to then develop our own internal capacity to use artificial intelligence to better deliver services to Canadians, to better provide tools for our employees to do their jobs in new and different ways. And so that was really the core of why the team was formed and the work that we do. While we have a lot of highly skilled people on the technology side, we're also taking it upon ourselves to develop sort of responsible and ethical guidelines around the use of artificial intelligence, including an AI strategy for the department and frameworks that we can use to make sure that we're not introducing any bias or other things that we don't want to see in our AI systems. So we have these two tracks that we're on. The Public Service Data Challenge dovetailed very nicely with the work that my team was doing, and that's why I got involved with Jay, Nicole, and the team. We saw that this was a great opportunity to use a new technology like generative artificial intelligence to deliver a better service to Canadians, which was really at the core of the idea that Jay came up with. And I just really want to underline Nicole's point about the hackathons being a really key component of the development of this idea. I can't highlight enough how important it is to bring in all these different perspectives when you're developing a program like the one that we did. Just having folks from the various parts of our department involved, as well as representatives from industry and students from the local AI program here in the college, really, really important to just bring together people to sit in a room and think about different ideas and ways to do things. It really can't be understated. And it did sort of form the crux of a partnership agreement that we've come up with to develop talent pipelines in AI, which I'll talk about in a moment. Maybe I'll talk post-data challenge, though, and sort of where things have gone since then. Since we won in June of 2023, my team has been engaging very, very closely with a number of other departments across the Government of Canada. So to date, I think we're up to close to 80 different engagements that we've had since the summer with other groups. And that's been really, really instructive in the sense that it's given us a really good view of the landscape across the government and what folks are doing in artificial intelligence. And one of the great benefits of being in the situation that we're in is that we get to sort of play that connector role, in that we see what other people are doing, and then we can try to leverage a lot of that knowledge and share it out as well. We're really of the view that to scale artificial intelligence across the Government of Canada, we have to work together. It doesn't make sense for every department to work in a silo and develop their own thing in isolation. Where I think we'll achieve meaningful scale in artificial intelligence is if departments build and share their code and their documentation, so giving folks essentially AI in a box and making that available right across the public service. And that really will help raise the level of ability in artificial intelligence, but it also helps departments that are very early in their AI journey to accelerate much more quickly. So having been in the situation where we're standing at the starting line, looking at departments that are further ahead than we were, having someone come and say, here's a tool that you can use to address a need, and here's all the sort of associated documentation, communications material, security documentation that goes with that. If you can give someone that and help accelerate their journey, I think that really benefits us all in the end. Yeah. So that's been very important to us. In terms of the talent pipelines I mentioned, we also realized early on that, while our team had a lot of capability, we certainly didn't have, the ability to take on all work that may come our way. And so it was really important to partner with a number of colleges and universities across the country to work together on various projects. And so one of the things we do is we work together with students at a few different colleges on in-class projects. So these would be real data from our department and a real use case. So essentially trying to solve a real problem that would typically be a side of the desk problem. So one of these things that it would be nice to get to if we only had the time. Mm. And we partner with these colleges and universities where we give the students the project and say, here's what we're trying to do. We work closely with them. They're marked for their work, which is a really great experience for them. And my team engages with them throughout the course of the project. So giving that mentorship and guidance. And then we benefit by, understanding what they've done and sort of receiving whatever they've developed. And it just creates that nice partnership between us and the colleges and the universities. And it also allows us to identify talented students that may be interested in joining the public service, which really helps us to diversify our workforce. We're able to bring in folks from all over the country with various backgrounds and bring that into the team. So that's very, very important for us. And so we typically will bring them in as a co-op student and then give them the opportunity to work on other projects. And, we can learn from them and they can learn from us with the view to potentially then even bringing them into the department at the end of the term if that was a good fit for both sides. So that's sort of the talent pipeline model that we've developed. And that's been one of the things that we saw in the data challenge by partnering with the college was that was sort of the germ of the idea to create these talent pipelines. So on the ethics and responsibility piece, really core to what we do. We have taken the view at AFC that, we have to go further than the bare minimum on all our projects. And the AgPal chat tool that we developed is a really good example of that. In Canada, we have, a directive that sets out the various things you need to do if you create an AI system that makes decisions. Now, a chatbot sort of falls outside of that because the chatbot itself is not making a decision, but we took the view that somebody getting information from a government chatbot is likely to make a decision based on that information. And for that reason, we decided to make sure that we followed every step in that directive. So doing impact assessments and making sure that we were doing things the proper way. So again, really excited to see where it's going. I'm heartened and inspired every time I meet with departments across the government and to see that the amazing work that people are doing. I think, Canadians are getting incredible service on that end from some of the work that we're doing. And I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Steve. Really interesting to hear what you're doing in your team and your unit there. So that kind of dual function that you have. So developing that internal capacity to enable the use of AI across departments but also developing the responsible and ethical guidelines side of things as well, which is really important. And again, you've stressed very much this sense of the need for partnerships, building collaborations across industry, but also, as you said, across academia and looking at colleges and students and that skills pipeline, because I think the skills is going to be a really important issue going forward. How do we in the public sector get in the skills that we need? And really interesting to see how you're working with colleges there on using real data and real problems. So actually doing things that are going to be really, really useful as well, and how that could lead to diversity in the workforce as well. And then very much this sense of let's all help others in this. So let's share everything that we learn as we build this knowledge base, and let's make sure that we share the good practice with each other. Thank you so much to all of you for those brilliant opening remarks. We already have questions coming in from the audience, which is fantastic. So we will get to those in just a moment. Please keep sending in your questions as well. But I just want to kick off with one question that we had in advance, because you've all mentioned kind of internal operations and how AI is changing internal operations, as well as the kind of end user delivering services to the public. A very simple, but in some ways quite a big question to all of you to kick off is, do you think the biggest potential for AI is in the changing the way we operate internally as public servants, or do you think it's going to be in transforming the way services are delivered to the public? And are there any policy areas that you think are going to be particularly transformed with the use of AI? Aaron, we haven't heard from you for a while, so I'm going to come back to you first.
I think, Siobhan, they're two sides of the same coin, ultimately. So, I think if we were to look at probably the way that we are approaching AI today and looking at the way that we can use, implement use cases, and where we heard from Jay and from Nicole and from Steve, and the importance of experimentation and the importance of collaboration to solve problems, we're doing that today in a context that we're all stepping into this new from where we are, which means the majority of the things that we will see in the short term, I think, will be about optimizing the existing experience. How do we augment the client journey? How do we augment the way the service officer or the way we work internally? But ultimately, as we get more maturity and prove out some of the technologies, and we are now, we will reframe questions in a very, very different way. And so I think actually, when we look at, is there a particular place where it's going to be more impactful? Well, obviously the impact will be felt by citizens in every country across the world, and for us here in Canada, for the Canadians. But the way it will materially impact the way we deliver services to them, which means it materially impacts the jobs that we will all have. And I think the skills pipeline, I think the training of and consideration about the way we will work in the future, and the different skills that we all will need, I think are going to be fundamentally important. I did note, I think a couple of weeks ago, the Singapore government announced they are bringing in place a new subsidy for people over 40 on the base for new education, on the basis that they will need new skills for the coming generation. And I think that's true for all of us at work, who says that we'll leave university with a set of skills at any point in our lives. And by the time 20 years in, technology is moving at such a pace that we're working a different way, that our skills will have to be updated, and we need to kind of consider that continuous learning journey as well. So yeah, I see, Siobhan, as today, the impact will be on both the client and the service officer side, and internally to our employees, as augmentation of what we do today. Yeah. But as we could develop this out, we'll see that we're serving clients in different ways, we're serving Canadians in different ways, and actually the whole way that we work will change accordingly.
Thanks, Aaron. Jay, I mean, Aaron's painted there a picture where so much is going to change and AI can transform so much. Did you have any different thoughts, or do you kind of agree with what Aaron said there on kind of how things are going to change both internally and in terms of what we deliver to the public?
No, I don't think I think I largely agree. I'm personally less familiar with the work that's underway on the internal side of things, though I'm familiar with some projects that Steve's team is working on that are very exciting. I'll just briefly make the case for the external customer service side of things. And this kind of comes back to the theme that I was trying to address earlier. If you're trying to buy new shoes, for instance, you go online, you can find what you're looking for in about 30 seconds. And if you don't find what you're looking for, you click the back button and you try somebody else. And this is what we become accustomed to, because there's this whole industry of doing this as efficiently as possible. And I think that there's this tremendous opportunity with these new tools for government customer service to catch up very rapidly to what's offered by the private sector. And that, I think, Canadians and citizens of other countries will notice that change very rapidly. If I can go to a government site, I need information about a program. I may not even know that the program exists. I just know that I have a problem and I need some help. If I can describe my own problem in 2 or 3 sentences, and within 30 seconds, the chatbot gives me the exact resource that I need, that's a transformative experience in terms of what you're getting as a customer. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to do that, and we're pretty close to doing that with our EggPal tool. So I think that's very, very exciting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jay. Nicole and Steve, I am going to come to you. You can answer that question, but there are so many questions coming in from the audience. I also want to move it on a little bit. So Nicole, I'm going to add in from Michelle. She has said that a lot of systems today, according to I think what she's read there, a lot of systems today aren't satisfactory. So only 36% of the GC systems today are satisfactory. So there is a huge issue in terms of the infrastructure needing to be modernized so that you can fully embrace some of these new technologies. So her question is, what is the status re IT modernization to support all of these efforts? So your thought, I guess this is just one of the barriers, I guess, to being able to fully embrace the potential of new technologies.
Yeah, I guess I can, I mean, of course, I can't comment on the main overall state, but yeah, I think that there's all sorts of new technologies, tools and softwares that are now out there. And all of these new tools are including elements of AI, generative AI components that are, I would say, kind of easier to use. Mainly we've, from the past, we've done lots of coding, like with coding softwares. And now, these new tools have low code, easy, platform interfaces, and all these interesting things that in order to adopt that, we have to look into them, right? We have to try them. We have to be open to new ideas, new softwares, and just get that exposure. So yeah, I think there's lots of work to do within the infrastructure components, but I think we're really working to do that innovation and that test trial.
Thanks. Steve, I'm going to ask you the same thing. To what extent is infrastructure kind of a barrier? Because obviously you're working with organizations across the public sector. To what extent is infrastructure as big an issue, maybe as kind of skills or collaboration, those kind of issues as well?
I think to some extent infrastructure has always been an issue. And so it's working within the system that you have. So I'm not, I think one of the challenges though is around data quality. So sort of separate from the technical infrastructure, I think that in order to enable systems like artificial intelligence or technologies like artificial intelligence, it's really crucial that you have very good data and that you're collecting it in ways that enable you to do artificial intelligence and these sort of advanced analytics and things of that nature. And so that is an area where I think that we all could do even better on. I think, one example of, using data in a great way is again, our AgPal chat site. We were beneficiaries of the fact that we have a team within our department that is, they spend their time curating and maintaining the data within that website to ensure that it's up to date and accurate and of good quality, good metadata and all those things. And so having that in place allowed us to do the advanced sort of artificial intelligence work that we were able to do. And so again, to speak to the question of the infrastructure, I would go back to, I think, if we're looking at these new emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, I think we do need to get our data house in order to some extent. And to really put a lot of more focus on improving that quality. But I just want to go back to the point too about the internal use of artificial intelligence, because I think that there are two pieces to that I want to touch on. One is just looking at AI as another tool that we use to augment and give folks additional capacity to do their job in new and different ways. I think that we need to keep it really central to the discussion that it's not there to replace or push people out of positions. It's really there to be another tool in their toolkit that they can use to do their job. And that's sort of what we've been trying to do. The other piece is around literacy on artificial intelligence. And I think that we do need to do a job of raising that awareness about what artificial intelligence is and how it works. And I'm not suggesting that people need to be detailed technical experts and know how these large language models work. But I do think people need to be aware that there is the potential for things like bias and misinformation that could be included in these things. And then it becomes incumbent on us to give people the tools that they need to be able to identify those things. And so I think that we need to do a lot of work on that front to just raise that level of education so that people know about some of these issues in the technologies.
Yeah. Well, we've got lots of questions coming in on kind of strategy and governance, so that we might pick up some of that in those questions. But I want to come to a question from Morris Bodnar, who has said, Aaron, this came from something you said about fading trust in government institutions. So the question is, how do you integrate chatbots and other intelligent systems to create trusting relationships? So obviously all of you in the data challenge, your solution ended up being the chatbot. Do you think this is something that will help in terms of building that trust with the citizen, or is there a risk that actually, because they're now kind of engaging with technology rather than a person, that actually this might detract from creating those trusting relationships? Aaron, I'll come to you on that one.
Well, that's part of that is the big question that we're all facing, really. How do we, in this environment, step forward and bring human-like interactions, but while at the same time being very transparent the fact you are not interacting with a human, and with those human-like interactions, as Steve said, the concerns around bias, the concerns around hallucinations, the concerns around the data challenge, that actually the data that these large language models are learning from in large bureaucracies such as the Government of Canada may indeed find contravening points. And actually, then we're asking the chatbot to resolve that and provide the information to a client, which is why I say I'm optimistic and cautious. And that is effectively the approach that we're taking, which is say we know that chatbots would fundamentally improve and augment the client experience and also support service officers in the way that they find and search for data across the Government of Canada and across Service Canada. However, we have to do so in a way that is controlled. Some of the themes we've heard from Nicole and the themes we've heard from Steve around orchestration and experimentation are fundamentally important to that ecosystem. There was a news article just a couple of weeks ago about Air Canada stepping forward with their chatbot and putting out a piece of information about the chatbot answered a question about bereavement travel that was fundamentally incorrect, and Air Canada were then taken to court on the basis that this particular customer went and booked a flight and then could not claim costs back because it was different to the policy that they were told by the chatbot. Clearly, it's embarrassing for Service Canada and it's not, for Air Canada, and it's not a great experience for the customer. When we talk about government services, it is fundamentally important that we are giving the right information to the right person at the right time. And so it is really important that as we develop these services and, that as we put these in the hands of citizens, that we do so taking experimentation, being very transparent about the risks, being very clear on the governance and the decision making, and being very observant of the outcomes as well. And it does require a different way of working, a different set of skills to perhaps how we're used to working. And I think this is all why it's really important that we step forward positively, but with our eyes wide open about how we deal with the challenges.
Thanks, Aaron. Nicole or Jay, given that your solution was a chatbot, do you have any thoughts on Maurice's question of building this trusting relationship? Jay, you're nodding. I'm going to ask you on that one.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking I'd like to add. So when we were testing our tool, we put a really a premium on ensuring that it wasn't hallucinating and lying and making up information. So we don't want it speaking confidently about things that aren't actually true. So a lot of our testing was to eliminate those cases to the highest degree that's possible. But we were also really conscious of the fact that you have to be honest about what you're comparing these chatbots to. And so if the chatbot didn't exist, would a citizen be speaking with a live human agent, or would they be going online and trying to find information from existing websites where they can't ever find what they're actually looking for, right? So if that's the baseline, then the level of trust that exists is already very, very low. And so, you'd get into situations where the chatbot may not hallucinate and it may not lie, but it may come up with what we know is the second, third, or fourth best resource. So it's omitted the very best resource. Now, is that still progress? Would that still build trust? It depends on what you're comparing it to, right? What is the present experience? We try really hard to think about that and have conversations with senior management about that to just build a little bit more confidence in experimentation and I think Canadians also understand that these tools are new and that people are kind of learning. And if it can help them in any kind of measurable way, you can slowly bring the trust along as the tools get better and better, so long as they're not making these Air Canada type mistakes and confidently providing misinformation.
Thanks. Nicole, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just say that we really took a lot of care with building safeguards into the tool right from the start. So it was an important understanding that to build that privacy element, to have kind of a comment right when you open the tool on, don't put in personal information and those kind of caveats of consent and the privacy element. We also built the tool so that it wouldn't, let's say, like to keep equity and fairness of others. So we did, of course, we don't want it to be, not discriminate against other individuals or just, side with one group versus another. So all of those things were considerations when we were actually building the tool. And I think that's a very important part when you're creating these tools.
Thanks, Nicole. Steve, again, I'm going to move on to another question because there is a quick question that's specifically coming for you. This is from Tanya. Hi, I have a question for Steve. Is there a public-facing document that captures the highlights from the 80 different engagement sessions that you mentioned? Is there anything that we could share with Tanya?
I don't have anything public-facing, but I can maybe summarize my discussions with these different organizations, and maybe that kind of gives you a flavor of where we're at. Most of the conversations were around, what is my team doing? How are we developing AI? There's specific questions about the chatbot, as well as another tool that we developed and have been sharing out. So it sort of took more of the form of demonstrations and sort of sharing out information. What I can share, though, outwardly is that I think that if you look across the landscape of the public service, departments are all at various stages. I think there's a small handful that are sort of at the edge of advancement in AI, and I think most departments are somewhere in the middle and still trying to figure out how do they use AI across the organization. What are the best use cases for it? How do you form a team? How do you work across the organization to ensure that it's not just a tech-focused thing and it's really bringing people together? So lots of questions about that. Lots of interest in the idea of partnering with educational institutions. Certainly a lot of interest around the concept of sharing out information with each other. And I think there's a huge appetite for that. So that was really sort of the nature of the conversations. So as much as we were sharing out our information, we were also learning quite a bit about where people are at different stages. I think in generative AI, a lot of people seem to be in roughly the same area as we are, in the sense that they're looking at chatbots as one way to deliver services. But I think, to some of the points that have already been made, that transparency piece is so key, because we can't, for something like a chatbot to be giving information about different topics. In our case, we're providing information on agricultural programs and services, which is important, but it's not life or death. I think the standard of care is so much higher when we get into things like immigration, employment, taxes. When we start branching into these other areas, we have to be very careful that we're either being very transparent and saying we're providing information, but ultimately it's up to you to validate the information. And you can do that, and here's some tools in which you can do it. And just being careful not to overstep in that sense.
Yeah, thanks. We've had 2 questions in about AI guidelines and kind of strategy. So Chris has said, we've developed an AI guideline and policy for our internal users to inform them about bias and other issues. Has AG developed something similar? And Nuruddin had also asked a similar question around, where are you in the department now on the creation of an AI strategy? So I think, Steve, this is probably to you as well, but Aaron, you might have thoughts about this, is the extent to which, is there a kind of creation of an AI strategy or guidance that can be shared across departments, and how advanced is that? I know you picked on that a little bit, Steve, in your opening remarks.
Yeah, absolutely. So within AFC, we are developing an internal artificial intelligence strategy that will set out how we intend to use AI, the vision, how we'll prioritize use cases, because ultimately that'll be important, as well as, we're going to get more requests than we're realistically able to handle. So then how do we determine what are the most prioritized projects over others? It'll spell out, again, our commitment to responsibility and ethics and how we work with our equity-seeking groups across the department at every stage of the process of development on AI systems to ensure that we're not doing anything that would prejudice or bias against any particular group. That's really key to it. There's a cybersecurity element of our strategy as well. So how are we doing AI in a way that respects all the cybersecurity requirements to make sure that our systems are safe? That's another key part of it. And ultimately, we want to align with the overall Government of Canada AI strategy that's being developed. And so for that reason, we're developing our strategy in 1-year increments. Because I think it's a little foolhardy to look out and say we're going to develop an AI strategy for the next 5 years. It's very difficult to predict what artificial intelligence looks like in 6 months, let alone a year, let alone 5 years. And so we've taken the approach that we'll do these 1-year strategies with the idea that we'll align with the overall Government of Canada strategy when that comes out. There's also lots of guidance coming out from various groups across the GC. So we have the guidance on the use of generative artificial intelligence. The Privacy Commissioner has put out some guidance, and there's others as well. And so I think it's really key to be able to synthesize all this information and use it, but it becomes very difficult in a sense that you have to stay on top of all this information that's coming out. And so I think that there's also, beyond just the technical teams, there also should be a function where somebody is looking at all these things and making sure that they're applied to your work at the department you're in.
Well, that's interesting because I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Steve, on governance and leadership, because we had 2 questions in on that. But I want to go to 2 other slightly more technical questions. So there's one question here, which was from Carl, who said, I was impressed to hear that the AAFC team felt they had solved the hallucination problem. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I thought hallucinations could not be ruled out 100% at this point. And then there was another question which came in. I'm just trying to find who it was from. So I'll find the name in a minute, but it was about how do you, because you all mentioned kind of potential bias, how do you mitigate against the issue of bias being kind of built in to the use of these technologies? Jay, I'll come to you on some of these. Your thoughts on minimizing bias and also minimizing hallucinations.
Sure. Okay, I'll start with the hallucination question. So yeah, that's also my understanding, and I gather some people theorize that just due to the very nature of the tools, it will never be possible to 100% eliminate hallucinations. But this gets into a bit of the technical side of how we develop the tool, and Steve or Nicole may be able to correct me if I go wrong at all here. But as Steve mentioned, we had really strong, well-curated data that the original AgCom website worked off of, and that was a real benefit for us. So we were able to take an existing generative AI model and effectively run the questions that would come in through users. They'd be interpreted by the model for plain language purposes. Then they would be run through the existing data set to find the best match there. And then the generative language model produces the response for the user. So that's a big help in terms of not having it go off the rails and come up with its own answer to the question, because we already had this strong database to be working from. And then we played around a lot with how to prompt the generative AI tool. You can sort of tweak how much you want it to experiment and how much you want it to come up with its own answers. And so we would turn those all the way down, and we would prompt engineer it to try and be as specific as possible. And that's really just a matter of writing a paragraph, but how you want it to respond to different questions. And so we experimented with that over and over and over and over again, making a lot of different tweaks until we found that the results were as close to what we wanted. So I don't know, Steve, what you would say in terms of where the tool is at, but when I was last looking, I've been on parental leave for a while, for those who aren't aware on the call, but it wouldn't really, in practice, wouldn't hallucinate really at all. The issue might be that it would omit certain answers, or that it would use somewhat creative language, but we were effectively able to eliminate that problem in our specific context.
Steve, did you want to come in on that?
I do, yeah. So I think we were certainly worried about the risk of hallucination. So one of the ways that we mitigated against that was, as Jay said, we connect directly to the data source that we're working with. So it's not like the tool is going out to the internet or going out directly to the large language model to start and then formulating an answer. We've done some really clever prompt engineering so that it's connected directly to the data source, and it's being told essentially, do not look outside the data that you have here. If you receive a question about anything outside of the data source here. There's a generic kind of templated response that we provide with some information about how to contact the team for more information, but it won't answer it. So for instance, if you were to ask it a vaguely agricultural question like, I have Nova Scotia blueberries and I would like to have a recipe for muffins, it won't tell you that because it won't be able to find that in the data set. So that was really important to us because we just, we spoke about the trust piece, and one of the easiest ways to erode that trust is to have these hallucinations introduced in it. So that was one of the steps that we took, but we've also put in other measures to sort of guard against that.
Yeah, thanks. The other question obviously was about bias, potential bias. Nicole and then Aaron, did you want to answer the question about how do you kind of minimize the risk of bias when using AI?
Yeah, I think so. Just kind of to highlight it's really important to have that curated data, so it's not searching outwards to anywhere. So limiting kind of where the search or the data lies. As well, I would say just keeping a human in the loop. So having user testing that happens frequently. So of course, within the launch, we did tons of user testing to see, what the responses came from the chatbot. But then even over time, as as it progresses, also just keeping that testing component within that process.
Thanks, Nicole. And Aaron, I guess for you working in the area of benefits in particular, this is a particular consideration for you.
Without a doubt. I mean, everything that we've been discussing is fundamental to the way that we deliver the benefit services to Canadians. Now, bias is a fascinating area because ultimately, how do we reduce bias in the way that we produce services? And coming back to Jay's point earlier about, the way that actually, if it wasn't a chatbot, what would you be interacting with? You'd be interacting with a human. Humans carry natural bias, and the challenge we have is that actually that bias quite often has filtered through to the way we make decisions and into our data set as a whole. And so when you're running large models that need to learn upon data sets which are already existing, there is bias in those data sets. The real question is, how do you drive to understand where the bias is and mitigate against it? I don't think you can ever reduce, I don't think you will ever be in a place, well, not for until we've done a series of data exchanges, I guess, where bias is eliminated from the data. The question is, how do we identify where the bias is and how do we mitigate against it so that we are providing that service? And the examples are there. The examples that have been seen not just for generative AI, but for AI applications across the world. In the UK, the Department for Education during the pandemic ran AI tools to try to predict what students' grades would be at 8/18. And for those, the natural bias in the data was that those who went to private schools performed better than those who went to public schools, and that then ended up going through all the way through the grades. And the Department for Education ended up withdrawing all those grades after they had issued them because of the bias that's there. So being aware of the bias, trying to get to the source or trying to understand where the bias is and then mitigate it is really important. I don't think we have the scale yet to really understand the tools that we need to reduce and remove the bias that's already in our data.
Yeah, thanks. We've got so many questions coming in, so I'm going to do a bit of a quick fire, I think, in the last 10 minutes that we have. So this one, Steve, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to combine two questions here. From Melissa, it was recently mentioned in a Government of Canada AI event that there are not many people in AI leadership roles in the Government of Canada. So how can we address this and what skills will they need? And I'm going to link that to Nuruddin's other question, which was, how do we make sure that governance of AI is built into projects and policies in the right way? So she was saying, have you implemented an AI governance structure in any of your projects? I think those two are related. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, certainly. So I'll take the second question first. In terms of governance, absolutely. So in addition to all the standard project governance that you would do for any sort of IT project that we follow, there's an extra level of AI governance that we do along with things. So that would be, if it's a decision-making AI tool, we would work very closely with the Directive on Automated Decision-Making and all the steps that are required there. We also engage right from the start with our equity seeking groups to make sure that if anything that we're designing includes their input and that we're co-developing it with them. So that's very important for us as well. And then obviously the security and privacy and all the other considerations that would be involved. So we do have a very rigorous AI governance, I would say, across the department. And I from my conversations with other departments, it's similar in other places. In terms of the AI leadership, I might challenge that assumption a little bit, because I do think that we have some incredibly talented leaders in the AI space working in the government of Canada. I know certainly, you look at other departments, Treasury Board is doing some really, really amazing work on the AI strategy at a senior executive level. And I think that they are doing really wonderful work, sort of setting the way for the rest of the departments to follow. Other departments similarly have really skilled AI leaders. I think perhaps the assumption could be, because it's such a new technology, that maybe it's not percolated its way up to senior leadership. But I think regardless of the technology, so putting aside technology and being a bit agnostic about that, I think what's really important is that we're looking at how we're delivering these services. So the technology is a tool that we use to do that. So in terms of what skills you might need, I don't know that it's necessarily, you need a specific coding skill or you need a specific, AI capability. I think it's more just being aware that these things exist, and then being able to have really smart people that work with you that can help you solve these problems in kind of creative ways, and not sort of settling in on we have to use AI to do this thing, but rather, is AI appropriate for this use case? And if so, then what's the best way to deploy it?
Thanks. And that kind of brings me on. There was a question from, let me see here. It came in from Morris Bodner again, who said, many government departments serve smaller scale client segments. So is it viable to invest in AI solutions where you have more modest returns on investment? Which kind of builds on what you were saying there, Steve, I think, is AI always the right solution, or how do we prioritize where we invest in AI?
Yeah, I think that's very key, right? I think, you have to be realistic about what you're able to afford and what you're able to deliver on, and do you use AI for everything? I think one of the benefits of taking this approach of sharing across the government of Canada is that it really does benefit smaller departments or smaller groups that maybe don't have a large AI team in place, but then they're able to get everything that they need to use some forms of artificial intelligence to better deliver services, and then enhance their own capability to look at developing their own tools.
Yeah, thanks. I just found, so it was Graham who asked the question about bias. So Graham, I think we've answered your question, but I want to put this last two questions I'm going to put to all of you, because I think, again, they are linked. So you might have to keep your answers quite short on this one. But Jan has asked, have you guys explored the option of a conversational AI feature like OpenAI's chat models to assist with public inquiries on available programs? And then Ray has asked, are open source offline AI tools being explored for use in government tools? So it would seem that governments would benefit from the use of open source solutions whenever possible. So I guess the two questions are is the government in Canada considering using open source tools? And also, are they considering creating one of their own that is like OpenAI for the public to use? You can answer one or both of those questions. Nicole, I will start with you.
I'll leave it to Steve to talk kind of more about the technical component of our chat mechanism. But yeah, our chat does, that was the benefit of the chatbot, was it is conversational AI. So that was why we chose it, to be able to explain or just, populate any kind of question that you had agriculture related, and then that conversational piece comes back from the chatbot. So I'll just leave it there. And then I think we're really, for the open source component, I think we're really in kind of preliminary stages with looking at, like, I'm aware of the open source AI tools and what's kind of available, but I think we're at preliminary stages to looking at, the possibility of using kind of, our Python codes to be able to design the AI algorithms. As I would say, like, the importance is that the algorithm is transparent. The code provides you with kind of the breakdown of what is happening and what it is doing. So yeah, I think we're just really at that experimental stage at this point.
Thanks, Nicole. Jay, your thoughts on Jan or Ray's or both questions?
Yeah, sure. Sort of echoing Nicole, I think the AgPal chatbot that we've developed effectively is one of those models, and hopefully that'll be online soon, and you can have a chance to play around with it and get a feel for what it's like. And then just somewhat to Ray's point, I would just say, it seems like there's a concrete kind of problem that's motivating this question, and we ran into myriad concrete problems as we were developing our tool. And I think one of the real assets that we had collectively as a team was just this relentless willingness to cook up new solutions to problems. So we had a bunch of privacy related problems, some of which involved data potentially going on servers that were in the US. And we kept trying to come up with new clever solutions. Could we do this slightly differently? Could we do that slightly differently? Could we, and slowly but surely we found there's so much happening in this space that you can patch together solutions to almost any kind of problem. So that's just an approach that I would strongly recommend, is just try and get people on your team who want to deliver the end result as much as possible, and where there's a will, there's a way in a lot of cases. Thanks,
Jay. Steve, your thoughts on these?
Yeah, I guess more specifically to the open source question. So we have been leveraging open source code for other systems. So the AgPal chatbot uses Microsoft's OpenAI service. So that would not be an example of an open source code. However, we have other tools that we've built that are entirely built in open source. So using Python libraries and other libraries that are available to the general public. And we see that as a really important tool for us, especially as we get into this idea of sharing out the code amongst each other, sort of getting away from that proprietary model and having this more open source approach. So we are certainly leveraging it. We do see the power of it, and it's one of the many tools available to us that we're using.
Thanks. Aaron, we started with you, so I'm going to finish with you, but I'm going to be slightly unfair here because we've had a really good question come in at the last minute from Albert. So you can answer the questions that we've just been discussing, but Albert has basically asked, what impact is AI going to have on workforce, and in particular kind of equity impact on workforce, because we're going to have to hit in, as Albert says, we're going to have to be hiring people that have more technical skills, and we're probably going to be reducing the number of people that have some of the traditional clerical frontline kind of skills that we would expect in the public sector. So what do you think in terms of the impact on the workforce?
I think it will impact the way that all of us do our work. So I think it's too early to really understand or to know the exact impact it's going to have in terms of the skills that we need. But I do know that, the strategy that we're very much looking at, to Steve's point before, is about staff augmentation. How do we augment people to make decisions, not how do we make decisions on behalf of people, which means that we still require to have a human in the loop. However, the skills for that human may change. So, it may be in an augmentation, as an example, and this isn't something we're necessarily working on, but this is just, an example. It may be that we are asking, that through the augmentation process, the assessment of all the documents that come in is done by a tool, and it provides some ideas or some highlights to the service officer who's making the decision. That service officer then is still in control of the decision, and what we need to do is be training the service officer how to interrogate that decision better, or perhaps to then review the information and how do we do quality assurance. So it will definitely change the way that we do our jobs, and it will definitely change, I think, and increase, and to Steve's point before about skills pipeline, both our access to academic skills, but also our access to internal technical skills that helps us to support as we step into this brand new world.
Brilliant. Thanks, Aaron. I guess it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. We need to take kind of people on this journey with us in terms of our potential users, but we also need to take the workforce on this journey with us and help them go through this kind of transformative phase. We are out of time. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. Thank you so much to the fantastic audience for sending in so many great questions. We haven't managed to get through absolutely all of them, but if there are any left unanswered that are questions, not just comments, then we'll try and make sure that we get something to you behind the scenes after the webinar. But I would like to say a huge thank you to our fantastic speakers today. What a great panel that was. So thank you to Aaron, to Steve, to Jay, and to Nicole. You can see there on your screens This webinar was part of kind of activities that we will be doing leading up to the Accelerate Gov event, which will be taking place in Canada, in Ottawa, in October 2024. So if you are interested in attending that, there will be lots done there. There are lots of sessions, I think, on AI at Accelerate Gov. So there is the link to that. You can look on the website as we get the details of that over the coming weeks. And we will also be, Global Government Forum, we will be putting on different kind of training events as well over the coming weeks and months. So you can see one there. There's an online training course on artificial intelligence on the 20th of March, which you can book on that line there. And I think there is another one in 19th of June, which has the same title of this webinar. So it's deploying AI in the public service and in the civil service. So please do go on the website if you are interested in signing up for any of those. We will be sending a link to everybody who registered today with a recording of today's webinar, so you can watch the video again or share it with any of your colleagues if you think they will be interested in watching this. And there will also be an article in a couple of weeks' time with some of the key issues that came out from today's conversation. We will be sharing that with everybody. Finally, to the audience, we will have sent you a short questionnaire. If you don't mind taking a couple of minutes just to fill that in, I'd be hugely grateful. It means we can keep giving you exactly the webinars that are of interest and importance to you. So it's hugely helpful for us. But finally, again, thank you to our wonderful panel today, to Steve, to Aaron, to Jay, and to Nicole. Thank you so much for that really interesting conversation. I think we'll summarize it nicely with Aaron's words, which is we are optimistic, but also have to be a bit cautious about the adoption of AI in the public sector, but lots and lots of potential ahead. Thanks to everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope we see you on another one of our webinars very soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.